YouTube. Happy Snyder Day. This is We Sibz and the Ledger collaborating. Laracuente Ledger coming to you. We are going to react, break down the Snyder cut of the Justice League, which just dropped. I'm Chris. We got Jay, Sydney, Zach, the whole crew. We're all here. Just still coming down off cloud 9. It's about 7:10 in the morning. We watched the entire thing through, no breaks. So we all have our insight to share with you. Before we roll into it, though, be sure to hit that subscribe button as always and click the bell on both channels so that you don't miss. We got a ton of Snyder Cut content coming your way this week and next. So, guys, let's just jump into it. Anybody who wants to dive in with an initial reaction, try and keep it relatively short. What did you guys think?
I wanted to cry for like 1,012 reasons. Like, first of all, my immediate thought was like, I don't understand why Warner Brothers doesn't get that in order to make a superhero movie very well, the person in charge of it needs to be a fan. Like, it was so clear that Zack Snyder is a DC fan. Just like the Russo brothers, just like Kevin Feige is a Marvel fan, like, you need that fan passion, because I tell you, there was so much fan service in this movie. There was so much just, he just paid attention to every single character's development. I mean, you could tell that Zack Snyder loves DC and he loves these heroes, and he made a great story with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Jay, Zach?
Jay, would you like to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, so without a doubt, I think that he definitely fixed the Justice League movie. You know, everything he did in that movie was just beautiful. Steppenwolf, for starters, you know, he just fixed all of that. But then the end credits scene happened. I don't know about you guys, but it just didn't land for me. I feel like it was supposed to be a lot of fan service, but it felt like he took the worst actors out of the DCU and stuck them all in a scene together. And it just, I don't know, maybe it was Jared Leto, but it just made me upset. So I went from very high, very high. You know, I love the movie, but that end credit scene just killed me. So.
Really?
See, I feel completely opposite about it. I think that the end scene, the closing out the way we got it was just a foreshadowing for the next two projects. We know that the rumor was that we're going to get a second and possibly third part, and I think that it really sets up for a very big reveal coming into the second and third parts of the Justice League under Zack Snyder. To me, this is a must-have project under Zack Snyder, getting Justice League 2 and 3. I'm super excited.
Yeah, guys, and I can't stress enough, if you want to see Zack Snyder take control back of the DCEU, you have got to stream the mess out of this. So play it again if you just finished it. Play it on your parents' phones, etc. My personal opinion, I absolutely loved the movie. There's so much that happened. It was the quickest 4 hours of my life, guys.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to end, and it just kept going through, but nothing felt, I never got tired. And I think it's a statement when you can start something at 3 a.m. and watch it all the way through. It was just incredible. Uninterrupted.
No.
So yeah, so we're talking about characters. Were you going to get into some of the character development?
Well, I was just going to say, in terms of not getting tired of it, I did get tired of it in the beginning because there were so many unneeded sequences. Like, and I get it, but I felt like with Barry and Iris, that altercation interaction, it was like Blade. And I feel like, because this was Zack Snyder's like director cut, in essence, he left it in, but that would not make it to final cut for like an actual movie. Like, that was too long. There were a lot of very like slow-mo scenes, like the bit with Wonder Woman at the beginning with the guys who break into the bank. There was just, there was a good amount of unnecessary footage in the beginning, but those last 2 hours were phenomenal. And even with the unnecessary footage, I was entertained the whole time, but that stuff shouldn't be in a final cut, in my opinion. It didn't
So
need to be 4 hours.
okay.
Okay.
So I again, I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think that because this is a 4-year project that's been in the making, we've been begging for it, pleading for it. You know, Snyder also had to give everything because if he
Mhm.
didn't, we weren't going to potentially get the next phases of his vision. So I think that this was not just a way to kind of give the whole story, but also a way to let the fans get his full, unfiltered, uninterrupted picture of what his Justice League was going to look like. So I think that when you look at all those scenes, to me, there was a whole lot of extra backstory that filled the entirety of this movie for me because I think that without some of those scenes, and maybe they were a little bit too long for certain parts, but I think that when you look at what we got from all of it, it's just a very easy story to watch because, like, you know, I didn't get tired of it. Chris didn't get tired of it watching it straight through for the 4 hours. And I felt like those pieces gave depth to the characters that we were completely void of in the
Sure.
Wheaton version of this cut. So I think that to me is the biggest reason why we got some of the extended cuts and scenes that we got from some of these other characters. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree about the character development, the backstory. That was phenomenal. I'm saying there's a lot of extra footage that's not needed. Just screen time, not the story development.
Yeah.
Because that was, I agree, on point, 1,000%.
Yeah, Zach, why don't you jump on in here? What do you have to say? Was there too much footage? Not enough?
Did it need to be 4 hours?
It did not. It could have been 3.5. It could have
There
been
we go.
3.5 hours. But like Jeremy said though, the character development, I actually care about the Justice League now. Not that I've never haven't. It's just now that this version of the Justice League is very important to me now. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to piece together the.
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? I have to strongly disagree. I'm sorry, so strongly. If
Go
you
for it.
know the amount of fight that everyday people
I
had to
know.
put in
I
for
know.
4 years
I
in
know.
order to get this,
Uh,
if you know what Zack
know.
Snyder went through with his family, the
know.
tragedy he went through,
Listen, I know you're
and to
trying to shame me. I
and
know.
to no,
I
no,
know.
no, not you. I'm saying just in general. No, it's not even Zach, it's not even directly toward you. But I'm saying when you take all of that into account, and this man sat down and edited and finished basically by himself a masterpiece of cinema, all the visuals. Who can make 4 hours of stunning visuals? We never got visually bored.
Man, that Russian fight.
I can't imagine watching any movie for 4 hours. And like I said, this was the fastest 4 hours of my life. So the longer scenes,
I'm
I think it has an advantage because Warner Brothers and executives like that, they pushed for a 2-hour movie. And for after seeing this, guys, honestly, I have a little bit of grace for Whedon. Because when you look at that masterpiece, that 4 hours, and somebody tells you you have to keep that under 2 hours, no wonder it was butchered. So the fact that Zack Snyder was able to let so many moments, so many characters breathe. Remember, so many of these characters are brand new into the universe. Batman hasn't even had his own movie, so they need that space. If they need 20 minutes to sit, so be it. But I've talked long enough.
I'll be
Let's get to
very, very, very bold with this statement, probably, and maybe one of a few people. But I could have taken another 2 hours and still been fine.
I totally agree.
I mean, yeah.
I totally
it was
agree.
good. Yeah, I agree.
Keep going, yeah.
I
mean,
told-
yeah, it's
and
the length
it's-
isn't the
yeah.
problem. It's
Mm-mm.
there really is no problem. Like they fixed that whole Russian end sequence. That was just beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of it,
Oh,
from
yeah,
the
yeah.
tower
About
to fighting to Black Suit Superman. It was just all beautiful.
Yeah, it was stunning.
let me tell you how much I enjoyed all of the nonsense that was clearly Wheaton's influence that got removed. All of the
Yeah.
corny jokes that,
Stupid
like
Russian
the whole
thing.
scene, like you said, yeah.
Even the
What was
color
the
grading.
point of that? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
The color grade was
so
gorgeous.
glad it was.
I was like, I'm so glad we're not in like neons and bright blues and like it's just it looks like a DC comic. So
Absolutely. I think color and tone are something that Zach just nailed from the beginning, from the conception of his universe with Man of Steel. He carried those colors through, but added a little punch of flavor for each character, I think. Some of the music, like XL Junkie, I think his name was. He was the original composer. He was working to make the music for the movie. And then Whedon brought on somebody else. He was actually the guy responsible for making the classic Batman themes. It was okay, but it wasn't inspired. The music in this movie for so many scenes, and particularly when Flash was saving Iris, the melody in that was so haunting. Like, and just overall, the score was, it fit so much better. It really, you know, you got all the little themes for different characters, their iconic themes. I mean, we're going to dive into a lot of it. So again, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the bell as we really dive into the meat of this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, I mean, the score of a film can really just, you know, bring life to it. I think that when you look at like Suicide Squad, for example, I genuinely believe the only good thing about the original Suicide Squad was the soundtrack.
Sure.
You know, so it's like when you look at how much the score in this film, in this version, in Zack Snyder's version, really just brought life to each and every scene that it was a part of. To me, it was just amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's talk some of the major developments before we get into the characters who developed. So obviously no Green Lantern in this one, but Jon Jones. So guys, what was your reaction to him? I personally felt like the CGI was a little underdone, but I forgave it. If there was one critique, it could use a little bit of work. But what did you guys think of Jon Jones? Go ahead, Zach. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So Jon Jones, everything. I think his whole character development, the way they kind of slid him in for future references, it was a great idea. You know, he didn't need to be in this movie, but it's nice that we know he's coming. But yeah, as far as the CGI goes, I definitely think that they kind of were like losing budget toward the end because Cyborg started to look fake toward the end. But not that that was bad or anything, you know. But
yeah.
Jon Jones, I love it.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of reshoots. As we know, Snyder brought in some folks, including Jared Leto and even Ben Affleck, for some reshoots. That whole scene at the end was part of the reshoot. We're going to get into the story of this because there's some questions about whether we're in an alternate universe or exactly what happened when the Justice League failed, guys. It all went to crap, and the Flash just pulled some mess like you wouldn't believe. And again, just a visual spectacular.
But you also got foreshadowing to that moment during the scene inside of the Krypton, the Superman's ship, his plane. When you saw Flash running through to hit the mother box that to kind of respark and reanimate Superman. In the Whedon cut, he sparked it at the exact moment it touched the water. Here it was in the water, and as Flash ran, it pulled back out so that it would meet at the same time. So we kind of got foreshadowing to that moment later on when we saw that moment in the ship.
Yeah, I was going to point that out. Like, and Barry mentions that when he hits the speed of light, like funny things happen with time. And so I think that was like a way of kind of making that clear. But yeah, I mean, Barry straight up had a flashpoint moment, and I almost I did lose my mind when that happened. It's so exciting. But that's a great question. I don't know. Something's definitely happening with time, and we know something's happening in the future, and we know it's surrounding Barry. But I do wonder, like, what was that when the box went in and then came out? Like, was that the weird thing that happened with time, or was it intentional?
Yeah, so I think it's exactly what Jay was talking about. There was a little bit of foreshadowing going on when the mother box actually pulled itself out. It was talking to time. So jumping ahead a little bit, we know the Flashpoint movie is coming up very soon. And in that movie, it's theorized that the Flash, instead of the traditional Flashpoint story where he goes back in time to save his mother, he actually goes to another universe in which his mother still exists. And that's how we get the whole multiverse. And you could see Zack Snyder setting all of that up. This is all his, by the way. All of these, you know, this multiverse, all this stuff was birthed from his ideas. No J.J. Abrams. He's not involved yet. So I think, you know, he was adding those little seeds because he thought he was going to get a Batman movie. He thought he was going to get Wonder Woman and Aquaman 2 and those things to be able to set some of that up. But because he wasn't able to get those things. I think we lost Sid for a second. She'll be back. But because he wasn't able to get those things, you could tell he was making a case for the continuation of the Snyderverse with the end of this movie.
Very true.
No, for sure.
Oh,
Go ahead, Zach.
all right, yeah. So my only concern with this version of the multiverse, because we're so used to the Marvel multiverse now, Flash didn't actually go to another universe, did he? He just kind of reset the current one that they were in. He went back in time within their own multiverse instead of creating a new one, unless if you're saying that when Superman came back to life, that created the split, since Superman's the focal point of all DC.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I think as far as the DCEU goes, the Flash and his, the whole multiverse, like we got in Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW, they are making the speedsters kind of the center of the multiverse. And so regardless of Superman, it was a situation where the Flash was manipulating what had just happened and taking things back into an alternate time stream. And so that's what we have now. But we also had the more additional nightmare sequence footage, which we thought was an additional time stream. Turns out it was Ben, like Ben Affleck, Bruce, having a dream. By the way, that was also
A premonition.
That entire, yeah, exactly, a premonition.
See, so I think it's very important when you hear like words being said in these films, because everything means something. So the fact that when we got told, when Bruce himself said that to Diana, to Wonder Woman, that he had a vision, a premonition of what was to come, basically, and then for us to be able to get that, to be able to see that to me is very, very foreshadowing, and I genuinely believe a couple big things are going to happen. But we'll get into that in a little bit.
Definitely. Welcome back, Sid, by the way. We know you're having some Wi-Fi issues over there in the West. But from there, guys, let's jump into some of the character development. So what we did as the four of us, we each kind of took a character to just keep a close eye on, watch the development, and give our take on whether they were done justice, no pun intended, or not. So ladies first, I guess. Sid, who did you have, and who did you think, and how did you think they were taken care of in the movie?
So I had Wonder Woman, and I think it's really interesting because we just are coming off of Wonder Woman 84. They didn't give us much more than what we had already seen in Justice League. We have a little bit more of her interaction with Aquaman, and then we also, we learned, that the Amazonians and I was about to call them the Aztecians. What are they called?
Atlanteans?
The Atlanteans.
The Aztec.
It's okay, it's late.
We know that, they have some beef, but, she's kind of willing to look over that to save the world with him. I think that's pretty cool. We also learned that she's 5,000 years old, which is a nice official number for Dub Dub, because we have not known, and her storyline in all of her movies has kind of been jumping back and forth in time. So that was cool to know. But yeah, I don't think we learned anything new. We know she's still hurting over Steve. We know 84 is still in the past and she's kind of recoping. We do know that she isn't sure if Themyscira is still there because of what Steppenwolf said. She thinks he's lying, and he is lying. He didn't destroy Themyscira, but she thinks he did.
A lot of them.
He killed many, but yeah, not.
Yeah.
He killed a lot.
And actually, in a video that Chris had earlier this week discussing that, he did say that he believed that there was going to be quite a few losses and casualties coming from Themyscira.
Yeah, so. We were kind of discussing what would happen in Wonder Woman 3, the future of Wonder Woman. I did a 3-part series on the DC Trinity, so links to that will be down below. But I meant to ask you, Sid, regarding Wonder Woman, what you think of the direction. Obviously, this is the first time we've seen Wonder Woman since the first movie, kind of warrior Wonder Woman, kind of I will take your head off. I mean, that bank scene
literally
was absolutely insane.
Take your head off.
Very literally. That bank scene, she was murking people. So very different from 1984. So what was your thoughts on on the comparison on that?
It was great. I mean, I don't know what Yeah,
I
it's
think we're
weird
losing
because
you
of the whole
just a bit.
time. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Hello?
can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying it's kind of weird because of the whole time situation. Like obviously, we have the first Wonder Woman, then we have Justice League, then we have 84. But what happened got all weird. So we're seeing the last time we saw her, she was soft, but technically the last time we saw her, she was in Wonder Woman 1. So it was good to see her kind of in action, fighting like hardcore dub the way we saw her at the end of BVS. Um, so that was really cool. Also, I wanted to note too, they kind of play up her and Batman sort of like coy, we like each other, but not realiness, which I think is nice because obviously we know they have a thing. So that was cool. But yeah, I mean, it's always great to see Wonder Woman, and it was cool to see her back in her like tough woman warriorness, because
The
she
real
wasn't like
Wonder
that in
Woman.
84.
Yeah, not that soft.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Any thoughts on that before Zach? We'll move into your character. Any thoughts on Wonder Woman?
So kind of touching back on the point of her not knowing whether the mascara was still there, if her mother was still alive. I think that it was really interesting the history that we got from Themyscira, and again the backstory that we got throughout this story, where we would see the arrow of Artemis being almost the key to the vault that told Diana the story of Darkseid. So I think that it was really interesting to get a full better picture of the history of not just Darkseid, but also the history that's brought on and told by the Amazons.
Yeah, no doubt.
True.
Zach, any thoughts on Wonder
I
Woman?
actually do. I'd love to comment off of what Jeremy just said, kind of with. All right, so this entire movie, about the lore between the Atlanteans and the Themyscirians, or however you say that, gave me a lot of Lord of the Rings vibes between the elves and the dwarves. I say this to say that in either the next Aquaman or the next Wonder Woman, I think that there might be a civil war developing between the two civilizations, and that may have been why Zack Snyder had so much more dialogue between Aquaman and Wonder Woman, how they're going to have to figure their people out. Because their people hate each other. They're friends. You know, the leaders are great, but the people hate each other. So that's going to be, I think, kind of a subplot leading towards the inevitable Darkseid finale.
Yeah,
Well, I
no,
also think that it's interesting, just to kind of piggyback on that, is that in this movie, it was made very clear that Aquaman is not the king of Atlantis as we know him to be following his movie. So in the original arc, the original actual physical timeline for us of 2017, it was prior to Aquaman really taking hold and becoming the king of Atlantis. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they kind of play that going forward inside of the Snyderverse.
yeah, definitely. So speaking of that, so Zach, diving into your character,
All right.
who did you have, and do you think they were done justice in Zack
Alright.
Snyder's Justice League?
I'm actually really excited to talk about this. So I have Flash and Cyborg, and I was kind of wondering how am I gonna, have these two relate to each other. And thanks to Zack Snyder, very easily it turns out. These two, I don't. They rarely were apart. They worked off each other great, whether fighting, talking, planning, just doing missions. So yeah, Flash, had some great parts leading up to his inevitable time travel, but Cyborg got robbed in that original version. Just
Yeah.
Big time.
I didn't even know his dad died in the original. Maybe he did. I don't know. It must have been a blink or something because they barely focused on it. You know.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see. This is really screwed up to say, but it's nice to see kind of the tortured feelings behind what he was going through.
I think
And just raw
again,
blood
it
depth of the
showed
character.
depth. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing for me coming out of this movie is, and obviously, the handcuffs that were placed on Whedon by Warner Brothers to keep it under 2 hours. But when you get the full picture from the original intended direction, you just get a level of
Yeah.
depth and understanding that you just don't really get from the Whedon cut.
No doubt, no
Yeah,
doubt.
you get full-bodied characters that are like worth looking at. And
Yeah,
Zack Snyder had tweeted like a couple months ago that Cyborg was the heart of this movie. And I was like, I don't know what he is talking about. And then you see the Snyder cut and you're like, oh my gosh, he literally comes into his own and like accepts himself as a hero. It was just like, yeah, it was really, really good.
Yeah,
I had no
I
idea
I
how powerful he was. That was
Oh
insane.
yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, well, it's funny because they always say that the Justice League are gods among men as opposed to the Avengers being, men trying to deal with being, having godlike powers. But speaking of Cyborg, yeah, he's basically a tech god. He could shut down the entire world essentially if he wanted to with a thought. So get into a little bit of the Flash because obviously he pulled some crazy stuff, Zach. So what did you take from that? And I love the hoodie, by the way. That's
Oh,
insane.
thank you. Yeah, I don't know if you
Absolutely.
guys can see it, but
Yeah, man.
yeah, flat. See, here's the thing. He hasn't suffered from the Speed Force yet. Before he kind of had rules set up because he kind of understands it, but he hasn't like suffered from it yet. Exactly. So I think in his movie or the next Justice League or whatever the next Flash is, because we see him, he's running very fast now. He's playing with it, and it's going to have severe consequences. And those I think will be coming soon, because this is a very young, very new Flash. So he's going to have to mature.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
There's
I have a quick
there's a
question. What?
Okay.
Oh,
Go
sorry. I
ahead.
was just gonna say, what did you guys think of the way? Because in this movie, in Snyder's cut, we see a lot more of how the Flash interacts
Mhm.
with the Speed Force. Because I'll be honest, I didn't like it. I felt like we were underwater. Parts of it I liked, but I didn't always get a sense of moving quickly. You know what I'm saying? So, what did you guys think?
Well,
So I think that this is a product of it being Flash's introduction. I think that when you look at the way that, for let's say casual superhero movie fans, or people that don't have the depth of knowledge from like the comic books, that don't really understand what the Speed Force is, it's hard to kind of picture that without slowing it down. Because for us that kind of have a base of knowledge to work from, it did feel like it dragged a little those moments within him within the Speed Force. But in order to speed up, you have to slow down for casual fans to really be able to grasp what the Speed Force is.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also part of where, like in the scene with Iris, where he's saving her, he's got time to take the hot dog out of the air, smile, laugh at it, put it in his pocket, and be able to just kind of tuck her up into a little ball, place her on the ground. So I think that there was a purpose to it, and it was to kind of let more casual fans understand that there's something really powerful at work here, and this is the easiest way for you to understand how fast he's
Yeah.
moving is to slow it down.
Yeah, I think definitely the Flash and how he's dealt with in this movie is really fresh and really unique. Two things that come to mind are obviously the CW Flash, which deals with a lot of treadmill type stuff and zooming past city stuff. And another one I think of is obviously the iconic scene of Quicksilver in the X-Men and how he does that. But I think it's kind of a combination of the two of those, and it's so well done. I hate the way that Ezra Miller runs, but when it comes to the effects and just understanding how the Speed Force is working and how electricity is just so much energy pulsating off of everything, causing sparks and all those different things. I think it's a really unique take, one that we haven't really seen at all on the small or big screen. So definitely love the way that Zach, and again, with such a visual master, from everything, even the subtle hints of 300 with the Amazonians, it's just so awesome what he was able to do visually. So a big fan of that. But from there, guys, I do want to roll into Jay because I think the shirt gives it away. You had tell us about who you had, and if you think have you moved a little closer to being a fan of the Bat in the DCEU?
All right, so obviously I had Batman. When it comes to this version of Batman, I have been very critical of Ben Affleck, and that's simply because I just don't like him as an actor. However, after seeing Snyder's version, I will give him a bit of a pass. I think that
What?
I'll take it.
I think in this version, in this cut, we got to see a lot more of kind of the base emotions of Bruce Wayne and of Batman, and kind of struggling with, you know, the kind of gravity of the decisions that he makes. When we see the beginning of this movie, it's basically from the end of Batman versus Superman, and the fact that Batman is now dead. Superman is now dead, excuse me. And, you know, Bruce feels responsible for that. As the movie goes on, and when we see they bring Superman back, you know, Bruce is really like, do it, hurry up, let's do it. And then when they start to see maybe this isn't the Clark that we knew, you know, he starts feeling that gravity again. And I think it really showed itself in the kind of ending scenes where he's basically going to sacrifice himself to the parademons, to Steppenwolf, to kind of break down this barrier so that the rest of the team can come in. And it really felt like he was going to sacrifice himself simply to almost appease his own guilt and his own conscience. And I think that when you see that kind of character arc, especially from what we saw from Batman versus Superman that I watched earlier this week, kind of leading into this, when you see that kind of arc and culminating into, you know, almost feeling like he's been redeemed. And that's something that we didn't get from the Whedon version. I feel like here we kind of felt like Batman redeemed himself even within his own mind and his own heart. So I think that that's really a big shift for me personally when it comes to Batfleck. And Chris, you know, you've always said that he's the most physically imposing one, and I've never disagreed with you on that. But I just don't. I struggled with Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne, less so as Batman. When he had the cowl on, he was definitely an imposing figure. But to me, in this version, we saw a lot more depth from the Bruce Wayne character side. So I think that kind of brought it all together for me.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you make a great point there with Wayne. He really was a focal point in addition to Cyborg in this movie. You can see kind of the turmoil and the torture that his soul is under because he had spent so much of his the last couple of years, I guess, trying to hunt down and tear apart these metahumans. And only through Clark's death was he able to see that they could be something more if they were united. So, and I had talked about this in the Future of Batman video that I did. But Ben as an actor in real life, like all these actors have such heart in real life. Ray Fisher, all these guys. But you know, when you look at what Ben Affleck has actually gone through, it adds a little bit of context and so much more punch into those lines that he delivers as Bruce. So I've always loved him as Batman. I didn't really care about Bruce, but like you said, I think he made definitely some leaps and bounds in terms of his acting performance with Wayne. Anybody else on Batman?
Like you said, when you said it really was kind of the story of Bruce Wayne, not so much Batman, and Cyborg, you know, Victor Stone. To me, those were the two kind of focal pieces of story that kind of drove this home. And I think that when we see that, this is kind of what led to everything that we saw and everything that we should have gotten from the Whedon version that kind of just felt chopped and blocked, especially now seeing the full version here from Snyder. To me, that was the two main kind of protagonists in the story, even though obviously all of them are protagonists in the story. To me, the story of Bruce Wayne and Victor Stone were really what drove this movie forward.
For sure. Any other thoughts on the character Batman? Anything that stood out to any of you guys, Zach or Sid, on Batman before we get to the man of steel, the man of tomorrow? All right, we're gonna get into it. Superman, baby. Oh boy, man, he's back and he's bad. I will tell you this. Sydney's a Henry Cavill fan. But I gotta just say this. The only issue I had with Superman in this movie was that there wasn't enough Superman in this movie. He definitely bookended the movie, you know, in the beginning, dealing with the aftermath of his death, etc., and being at the end just stupid powerful, just amazing. I don't see how you could want another person other than Henry Cavill on this planet to play Superman. He plays it with so much heart, plays it with so much depth. I don't know who the casting directors were for this DCEU, but it's fantastic. But yeah, so getting into Superman, obviously we had the black suit. He signed a 5-picture deal with Warner Brothers. Hallelujah. And I could not be happier. Looks like we lost Sydney again from the West Coast. She'll be back shortly. But yeah, so guys, I'll give it to you. What did you think of Superman at this point and his development? I guess, Zach, yeah, you got something?
Okay. So is the black suit permanent? And here's why I ask.
No.
Because of Bruce Wayne's premonitions and because of his dreams, I feel like he had this beautiful arc of being a good person again, but now he's going to go back to being, really insecure and paranoid about Superman, kind of bringing him back.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and it does deal with the premonitions and the visions that Bruce was having. It's part of the reason that Flash went back and told Bruce Lois is the key. In that end sequence, that nightmare sequence with Batman and Joker and Slade and etc., Joker had said, you've destroyed this world because you let her die. And then Cyborg had said earlier in the scene, we need to stay low or he's going to find us. At the end of that scene, Sid's back. At the end of that scene, he finds them, and I'm assuming they all die. Okay, now this was a dream, maybe. I think it was a premonition.
So it is. It's definitely a premonition, and I have a couple of theories about where this is actually going to go. So
yeah, jump into it.
As we know, the rumor is that we're going to get a second and third Justice League from Snyder's version. His story. That's the idea. That's the hope. That's the vision here, right? So I think that when we look at what these two pictures are going to be, and we know that Snyder himself said that he kind of had an end game in mind, an end point for this story. And I think that the end point for this story is going to be with Superman's death. Now, I say that with the part 2 being...
Yeah, again.
Well, yeah, but the permanent death. So I think that part 2 of this story is going to be them kind of coming together to fight against Darkseid to take him out. But I think in that battle, we're going to see Darkseid take out Lois, which is what's going to lead to Superman kind of snapping, taking out Darkseid, but then Batman being the reason why Lois died. And he being the villain of the third Justice League movie.
Yeah, that's the main. Yeah, a lot of people. It's funny. I've heard like rumors of that exact thing. Batman being the reason that Lois died, and that's why Superman has such a grudge against him in the end. And Darkseid kind of comes over, kind of as a father figure to Clark in his grief. So definitely, I totally agree with that theory. I definitely think it's plausible, especially if it's all about Lois. I mean, it's like Flash said, Lois is the key. If Bruce, after getting the second chance, allows Lois to die, it all goes downhill from there. We know Darkseid is on his way. So, Zach, you had something?
I guess I have a few things.
Sure.
Ignoring my disgust for Lois, which has always been. All right, it's just the character. It's just, there's just no love there for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing her die because it's been hinted to so much that it's bound to happen. As for Superman permanently dying, we have to look back to the original DCU movie, Man of Steel. If there's any kind of suggestions that Superman's evil or that he's going to die or something, then I'm all for it. But I recently rewatched Man of Steel and I really didn't see it. Because that's how these movies work. You always find Easter eggs way back in the first movie that tie into the last. But I really don't see that connection yet.
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
So again, I think that it's going to be something that gets materialized through the next 2 films, where it really comes to play. That Superman goes bad because of the pain, because of the grief. I think that what we see in this movie, when he is kind of like evil, not himself in his head, and it's Lois that brings him back, it's also going to be Lois that sends him back to the dark side. no pun intended. So I think that when you look at what it's going to be, what it's going to lead to, in order for him to be able to get back to being the villain, I think that's where we really see the opportunity is going to be because of the death of Lois. I think
Yeah,
the Justice Injustice games did something with that, where
yeah.
Superman was the bad guy.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So the first one started out with Superman being tricked into killing Lois by the
mhm.
Joker, and then he decides that everybody's too dangerous and he needs to take over. But yeah, it could definitely go in those directions. But yeah, just a ton of character development. Again, I love that they had so much room to breathe. I don't mind the extra runtime. But Sid, you had brought up a good point before we started shooting, and that is getting into Steppenwolf. Fantastic villain, I thought. So since you brought it up, Sid, why don't you start us off with Steppenwolf?
Well, I was gonna say also, sorry for all of my technical difficulties. As you know, my Wi-Fi sucks. Anyway, yeah, just like I mean, I didn't realize how much the Joss Whedon version of Justice League sucked until you see the Zack Snyder version. Like literally, you have no motivation for Steppenwolf in Josh Whedon's, and then all of a sudden, or Joss Whedon's, and then all of a sudden, like everything makes sense. His motivation, like he's trying to get back in Darkseid's good graces, and that's why he's doing all of these things. He's just desperate for to please his master, and like it just everything makes sense. The mother boxes, like where they originated from, why they're so important, just all of it makes sense. Just yeah, I can't get over how much sense it makes, and I'm blinded by how much like they got away with in the first Justice League because it's like he had no reason to do any of those things. It all came out of nowhere.
So I
Facts.
have to disagree with just one thing that you said. If you couldn't tell that the Joss Whedon version sucked before watching this, you really weren't paying attention to that movie.
It's not that
Yeah,
I
no,
didn't know that it sucked, it's that I didn't know how much it
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah, and again, like I
Yeah.
Joss Whedon knows how to make a movie. We've seen
Yeah,
that
and
before.
what?
I don't
Yeah.
want to take that
Yes.
entirely away from him, but at the same time, um, when you look at the problem was the heart. The problem really was the heart.
He didn't care.
Whether it's the motivation for Steppenwolf or Cyborg's story or the torture of Bruce, Joss Whedon ripped the heart out of the movie, and I think that's what made such an impact. And again, Warner Brothers breathing down his neck saying, "Make it 2 hours. Don't make it more than that." It's a difficult task. So I think he gets a lot of hate for that. But no, Steppenwolf was fantastic. Zach, you got something?
Yes, he needs, I don't want to be too mean to him, but at the same time, he put a lot of extra scenes in there that were just really goofy, like
Mhm.
the Russian family
Yeah.
and just the lighting and some of the talk, like basically
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
that got cut out this movie.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he put in, which is
Yeah. I mean,
funny that Zack Snyder did that, just outright deleting Joss Whedon.
yeah.
But
I think it really just stands out to me. Like I said earlier on, everything that got removed from this movie to me is what makes this one so much better. There was clearly a lot of influence in the Joss Whedon version from Joss Whedon, that to me took away from the story. Like the scene where in the Whedon cut where Aquaman is sitting on the lasso of truth and starts saying how he's so afraid and this and that. Like this version of Aquaman is literally a water cowboy. Like this is not somebody that's just gonna all blurt out his emotions and his feelings. Like he's gonna keep that bottled in as long and as hard as possible. Like it's not gonna be that simple. And to me that was just a little fun moment that would have been seen in like a Marvel movie where we don't get that from DC. The
Totally agree.
funny moments that we get from DC are subtle, like Barry taking the hot dog, when he's catching Iris. Like that's the subtlety, the comedic moments that we're supposed to get from a DC thing, where it's subtle, it's little, it's not,
Yeah.
in your face blatant. And I feel like the Whedon cut really was just a lot of blatant like attempts at humor
yeah.
that weren't funny. And especially when, you're dealing with DC, aka dark comics, even though that's not what it actually means. But when you look at what that symbolizes for fans like us, for fans of DC Comics, it's not supposed to be funny. Like, it's subtle, it's intelligent comedy. You know what I mean? And I think that for me,
Yeah,
a lot of what was taken out made this so much better.
Ooh.
definitely. Yeah.
Alright.
Oh,
So-
Zach,
Yeah, I
something?
agree. I think the Joss
oh.
Whedon cut was.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, what were you gonna say? Because I was.
We're all talking at once.
All right. Who's talking?
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Sid, you're
Go
good.
ahead,
You're
Zach.
good to go. Sid, you're good to go.
Oh, me. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you.
Well,
Zach
I
gave
was
it to you.
saying that the Joss felt a lot like a nod to Avengers in a weird way. Like, we got, like Jay was saying, like the Russian family, the lighting, the weird, quirky jokes. And this movie was so DC heavy. Like, it was dark. We had swearing. There was blood. There was some intense
There was so much
violence coming
blood.
out of nowhere. There was shock. It felt like we were watching DC in a movie, which we have not felt since BVS. I don't think, So
I agree.
Agreed.
it was
That's very
great.
true.
Yeah.
Can't say anything about it.
So,
Zach.
okay, somebody who I felt nailed their role and was just encompassed all of the DC, subtle comedy and dark gritty, just everything was Commissioner Gordon. And I just wanted to talk about him because I loved it so much. I loved every single moment from Simmons, J.K. Simmons. So yeah, that's mostly just what I wanted to point out was just, him throwing out all of his daily notes and talking to everybody was just very Batman, and I want more. I just want more.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the Slade show.
I kept
Yeah,
I
definitely.
kept tripping
go
over
ahead.
him.
Go ahead, Sid.
Oh, I was just gonna say I just kept tripping over him and I kept tripping over him and Willem Dafoe because it's like that's the Green Goblin and J. Jonah Jameson. Like, literally, that's all I was
right.
thinking in my head.
Right. Yeah. It's really interesting, but how these superhero actors just flip around from movie to movie. But guys, as we begin to close, let's talk about obviously the unsung hero, or should I say villain of the movie, who came through like a boss, Darkseid, for the first time in cinema. Sound off. Who wants to go first? I'll finish it up.
I'll go first.
The stage is yours, my friend.
First off, because they fixed Steppenwolf, right? Steppenwolf, whatever his name is, he's dead now, so it doesn't matter. He is the herald for Darkseid. He is the warm-up for Darkseid, and he did that perfectly, all the way down to when his head gets cut off, rolls into Darkseid's foot, and then he crushes it. It's just so good. And every time I saw Darkseid, and it's interesting because with Thanos, yeah, there's some fear, but the fear with Darkseid is just escalated and multiplied by so much. There's, he's glowing fire, and it's just great.
Excellent point. Yeah, great point.
Even in
Who's up?
I think that's a good
Who's up? I
point.
know y'all want a piece of Darkseid. Who's up?
Yeah, I think
Well,
they picked Steppenwolf, which made Darkseid even scarier. And even just looking at the juxtaposition between their sizes, Darkseid is so much bigger. His voice is so deep and scary. And can we talk about that moment where they're looking through that boom tube, that hole, and he sees them, they see him, game recognizes game. I was like, oh my gosh, it's about to be on and popping. I was so excited. I screamed. I was like, bro.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Dream come true.
I thought he was gonna pull Superman in, honestly. Reach through, grab him by the
Yeah.
ankle, and then yank him out.
It's crazy.
So I have 2 points about Darkseid and his introduction. First, I thought that it was really telling how through the first half of this movie, they wouldn't say his name. Almost out of fear and reverence. It was like we dare not speak his name. It was all about appeasing him. And then when they finally said, Darkseid, it was like, oh, it gave you a chill in your spine. You know what I mean? And the other point, when it comes to him and his reveal, right? When he comes through during the like the stone figurine when they're first trying to set up the mother boxes or
Yeah, the
whatever.
hologram. Yeah.
Yeah, when he comes through as the hologram, he's not actually there, and yet Steppenwolf removes his armor. He kneels like, you know, in straight like reverence to, like, you know, his master, his lord. And it's just, to me, it was just so telling about how much more and how much more powerful Darkseid is and is going to be for everything that's coming in the Snyderverse DCEU. To me, those
Absolutely.
two moments, those two things really stood out to me big time about Darkseid.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with all three of you. And
What do you
let me
got?
talk about Uxas for a minute. Let me just say this. All right. Let me just say this. Darkseid is a DC fan's dream come true. And let me just say this to all my Marvel fans. I'm going to let y'all finish with Thanos, but it's not even a competition. And this is why. Thanos, right? At his heart, he just wanted to help the universe, right? Twisted as it may be, he wanted to help population control. Darkseid is a villainous, psychopath, murderous, almost all powerful villain. And like Jay said, when he arrives, even in hologram form, people kneel. And Zach did a wonderful job of setting up that fear of this dude. And it's the only thing that I think it lends some credit to him, saying that, you know, Superman might die. They all might die. I mean, we already saw in this movie that they failed. But all right, I'm not going to be on my soapbox that long. But listen, Darkseid and Thanos, it's not even a comparison. First of all, Darkseid was created first, okay? So for all you people who come on watching these movies thinking that, oh, Thanos came first, check your comic books. And number two, complete psychomaniac. You think Joker's crazy. You think Thaddeus Kilgrave is crazy. You have no idea the craziness that Darkseid is going to bring. With that, I rest my case. Any closing comments, guys? We want to wrap it at around an hour. So last few just ideas. And obviously, again, guys, we're going to be doing a bunch of Snyder Cut content. So hit the sub button and like. Anybody?
All right, I got this one. Just something for us all to dream about. All right, because we're all very tired. When Superman and Darkseid actually meet, I'm going to die on the spot. Yes. Because now that we know what Darkseid can bring to the table, now that we know that he has played up to what the comics have, set up for the character, and that they're able to do it justice.
Watch out. Watch out.
I'm ready.
Anybody else?
I'm ready.
So, two things that really stuck out to me from the premonition, actually. The first thing is we got told about two prominent deaths that are coming in Robin and Harley Quinn. And I think that when we look at exactly what this is going to mean for the future of the Snyder version of the DCEU, I think that to me is such a foreshadowing of the stories that we're going to see, which means we're going to see the Killing Joke from Snyder. And to me, Snyder, being the comic book fan that he is going to do such justice to the Killing Joke. That to me is going to be absolutely phenomenal, and I cannot wait to see that version of what Snyder has in store. The other thing that I really noticed from the premonition was not just the fact that, you know, we had kind of all these characters kind of thrusted together, but the fact that they were all fearful of Superman. Almost as if there was no getting to him anymore. And we knew that that was kind of the key here, because Lois was the key. But it was like, and Cyborg said it, and I think, Zach, you brought it up earlier when he said that, you know, we kind of have to hide. We got to get underground. We got to stay low, because if he finds us, it's like, that's it. It's over. We're done. So those were the two kind of really big things that stuck out to me. about the premonition itself. Obviously, the movie itself was incredible. Probably gonna watch it again within the next 24 hours, to be honest, because I'm sure that there was a ton of stuff that we missed. Like, and obviously, in order for us to get more of the Snyderverse, we have to keep binging it. So make sure, DC fans, make sure you continue watching the Snyder Cut. Watch Batman versus Superman, Man of Steel, the first Wonder Woman, everything that Snyder had his hand in. We have to watch, we have to push, because otherwise we're not getting any more of this amazing film that we got. So we have to keep pushing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think something that stuck out to me from that whole like dream sequence and all of that stuff. Well, one is how it relates to the anti-life that Darkseid is after, because the whole time, like throughout the first like 3 hours of the movie, they were talking about this special thing that made Earth so special. This was in the dirt, what he was looking for, and he obviously in the dream sequence in the future finds it and uses it for something. So I guess I'm just wondering like how that relates to everything else. Um, but yeah, I don't even know, man. I can't even process like all the
Yeah.
information that we got from that
Yeah, we're still coming down.
pop into the future. Honestly, yeah, because I'm like, so many things happened. I wrote a bunch of things down. We know something happens with Robin, and that trips up Batman, and then Batman and the Joker have that whole confrontation.
Well, Robin
I want to
dies.
point out.
Yeah, that already.
Well,
happened.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I know he died,
He gets beat to
but
death
Well,
with a
how?
club.
just to piggyback on Sid's point real quick about like the premonition and what it means, we know that it was said that when Darkseid activates the anti-life equation, it eliminates all, and anybody who survives becomes like his servant, his slave, and they become a parademon. So it's interesting to see how we have a group of heroes, a group of the Justice League, a portion of it at least, that has survived and has not become parademons. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, that's a good
Definitely.
point.
Yeah.
Something just to
Zach?
Yeah, something with the Robin theory. He's never been alive yet in the DCU, because even back in Batman vs Superman, we see the Robin costume all spray painted with "You failed him." So, Robin has never been alive yet. That might be the Batfleck origin story, is the Killing Joke, and that also leads to why Batfleck's so angry in Batman vs Superman, and just the whole roller coaster. The top of this path is the Killing Joke, is the Robin death, and we have to see it.
Yeah. Now, in closing, I do want to give some insight on that. So basically, Snyder had created a story. He had a story in mind to tell that exact thing. BVS was not supposed to be the first time that we saw Batman. There was supposed to be a little bit of that story origin already happening, but Warner Brothers shot it down because things were starting to get shaky with the DCEU. And so now he was asked in an interview fairly recently what he would want to do with that Killing Joke, and you could see he doubled down on it in this Justice League movie. He said that he had talked to some people about doing a comic run because it is in the past now. It's very unlikely that he would get the green light to go back into the past to do a little bit more origin. It would mostly be about Batman continuing to find more members of the Justice League and then eventually finding his new replacement, as Batman. And that would be kind of the way it moves forward. But just so much, guys, so much that
just kind of seeing where it could go. In the film that we get about him finding his successor as Batman, we could get a lot of kind of the backstory of what happened to Robin that led him to this point. So I think that could be an easy way to kind of, filter in some of what should have been seen before Warner Brothers got all dumb in the head and didn't let him continue his vision that clearly was an amazing vision.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like the
definitely.
moral of this whole, Snyder cut is kind of DC is not Marvel, and that's okay because DC is
perfect,
awesome too. Like I feel like that sums up all of it.
It really is. There's plenty of room for
Yeah.
Marvel and DC to do their thing. But guys,
I think. Wait, before we get up, I think
yeah.
Warner Brothers needs to really pay attention to this fact. I know that they want to be able to kind of make the bank that Marvel has put together, but Marvel took their time building their story. And DC has to do the same thing in order for them to be able to get to that same financial level. Because we know, obviously, at the end of the day, for Warner Brothers, for AT&T, it's all about the bottom line when it comes to these franchises and these products. And this is a franchise that, when done correctly, you have the opportunity to make more than Marvel, in my opinion, because these characters are so iconic.
All time.
Because think about it, when you look at what the characters were from Marvel prior to the start of the MCU with Iron Man 1, they were never as famous as Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. The most iconics were, Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk, and they didn't start with those characters. You know what I mean? So when you look at what the DC EU could be when done correctly, this is a money-making franchise, and I think Warner Brothers needs to realize that it has to have the right director, it has to have the right vision, and that vision is Zack Snyder. So hashtag restore the Snyderverse.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic movie. So much to go over. This is just our initial reaction. So you want to keep it locked here on Sibz, as well as the Laracuente Ledger Network YouTube channel, our sister channel. We'll be doing Snyder Cut coverage all through this week and next week. There's going to be a ton of reaction. So again, keep it locked here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for joining us tonight, this morning. And we will see you in the next one. Peace.
See you.